Continuing with our discussion on international monetary system. As we had discussed in our yesterday's class, we said that international monetary system is involved in facilitating or providing a financial environment, international financial environment that will encourage international business, trade, or maybe movement of capital. So all these are happening through the platform of international monetary system. So that's the importance of international monetary system when we look from the perspective of international trade. Okay, so if we summarize the major the role performed by international system, it can be categorized broadly into three. One is there is an exchange rate, that is conversion of, yesterday we have learned about what is exchange rate, conversion of one currency for another. So there is an exchange rate arrangements that will be happening with the support of financial institutions. Second is there will be movement of capital from one country to another. It can be in the form of investments, it can be in the form of financial assistance, or maybe in the form of investment in different business, but definitely there is a flow of capital. And when there is a flow of capital, we also know that it happens through a channel which involves the banks, the commercial banks, the other financial institutions, the brokers, the dealers, all those who are involved in converting one currency from another, taking care of the prevailing exchange rate. So that's the second thing that definitely is part of the international monetary system. And the third one is, of course, we have a collection of institutions, which will include financial and non-financial institutions, multinational corporations, businesses, groups, individuals. Plus, we have certain rules. When we talk from Indian perspective, we have FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act, and we have rules and conventions that governs the operation in the international market. So this is the background of international monetary system for any country. Okay, and in standing in this background, we are going to discuss about the evolution of international monetary system from the beginning. So if broadly, okay, there are certain changes which has happened in between and all, but if we are broadly going to categorize the international monetary system, we can categorize that into four periods, primarily starting with the 1875 to 1940. Then after the World War I, we have 1915 to 1944 till the Bretton Woods Conference, because of the collapse of the Bretton Woods system, because of the inefficiency of the interwar period management strategies. We went with the Bretton Woods system, where we also told about the evolution of International Monetary Fund and other organizations which are involved in the international trade. And that era is from 1945 to 1972. And then starting from there, we have a system which is prevailing from that period till now, with a slight or modifications with respect to rules, regulations, management, all these aspects. But primarily, the concept remains same from 1972 to till present among the world economies. So let's take one by one. Gold standard. So when we talk about gold standard, as the name indicates, here the value of currency was computed on the basis of gold. So say for example, I put 1 ounce of gold is equal to 20 pounds, which was fixed by UK. US, they had little more demand for the currency, so they kept it as 1 ounce of gold for $10. So ultimately, when we look, it will be like 20 pounds of UK equal to $10 of US. Why? Because it's already pegged against gold. The term which we use is pegged. The value is fixed based on the metal called gold. And they said 1 ounce of gold is equal to 20 pounds. That's how they fixed. And accordingly, here also 1 ounce of gold, here $10. So when I'm trying to compute the value of any currency, I would be just relating to its value in accordance with the gold. So that is what we talked about, the gold standard. And it was a fixed exchange rate system. That is, the demand and supply of the currency was not taken care. It was just looked into from the value of gold. So that's why we say that it's fixed according to the rates of gold. But the opposite, which we are going to learn in our coming up slides, which talks about flexible exchange rate system. But here we are discussing about a system which is fixed against the value of gold. That's why it is called as gold standard. And the system was prevailing from 1875 to 1914. And what we have to remember from this perspective is, here there was easy convertibility of currencies to gold and back. And every country used to maintain their reserve in gold, because definitely if they have to bring up with some currency value or changes in the value of currency, that has to be based on the value of the gold. So the system during that period had a custom of keeping a lot of money as gold reserve, lot of reserve being kept in the form of gold. That was the prevailing system in gold standard. So that is the first era of international monetary system, which is separately identifiable, which started from 1875 and it prevailed till 1914, right? And then the system got collapsed because of the heavy losses which has occurred to different nations because of World War I. So they lost their reserves, they have lost the money. So accordingly, it was very difficult for them to peg their currency against gold, because they did not have money. A lot of money was wasted because of the war or negative impact of war. So the next system which came up from 1915 was called as interwar period, which lasted from 1915 to 1944. And here the gold standard was abandoned. I said the primary reason for that is countries did not have gold to keep as their reserve. So naturally what they did was, in a way, they went with a fluctuating exchange rate based on the demand and supply. Okay, but it was not so so evidently practiced as we have it now by having rules and regulations. But countries began to depreciate their currency so that they can export more and earn revenue. But primarily during this period, this was a short period. If you look at the evolution of the money monetary system, but during this period, the standard pegging it to some other fixed aspect like gold or dollar, such things were removed from the system, and the currencies were free to trade between. So those economies which were performing well, which were picking up after the war, could appreciate the value of the currency, and some of the economies had severe problem with respect to the value of currency, because their economies is already lost. They have to come up with reviving the economies through more business, through more trade, through more economic activities. So during that period, these economies had a difficult time in managing the movement of the currency rates. Okay, so that period is from 1915 to 1944. Now, the next system which had a prominent impact on international monetary system was Bretton Woods system, which was from 1945 to 1972. Especially the world leaders who took up the lead role because of the collapse of the previous system, which was formulated in interwar period, was the leaders who take up the role was from USA and UK. And what they did is they began talking about how the international monetary system could be stabilized, because some of the economies were performing very bad during those time. So it took the decisions were taken in the Bretton Woods Conference, which was held in USA in 1944. And here there came the dominance of United States of America in the world economy. This period is quoted to be the era which gave more power in the hands of US as a nation towards the other world nations. Because here what happened here is since US had a more stabilized currency, since their economy was more or less stable during that period, many of the economies were depending on US for managing their foreign exchange and other activities. The currency rate was fixed by pegging against the US dollar. So that was the definite direction which gave a powerful lead to United States of America. So here the pegging, initial pegging during that time was $35 can procure 1 ounce of gold. The system came reverse. Now dollar is the value of your currency is fixed against dollar, where which says that with $35 I can get 1 ounce of gold, and all other currencies were pegged to US dollar, pegged or fixed to the value of US dollar. But of course, no, you can fluctuate within a band of 1% depending on your conditions. Like this $35, maybe you can just alter it to little. 1% freedom was given to for deviating between the fixed standard. But countries were given with flexibility of only that much. They had to fix their currency with respect to the US dollar. Okay, so that was a major direction or major step towards the stabilization of international monetary system, which took during the period of 1945 to 1972. Okay, so that was a strong measure that was adopted, where almost all economies were having a system where they were more or less dependent on US economy, and they will be keeping their reserve either in dollar or in gold. In India also we had, now of course we are as we say diversifying the portfolio, but we had a system where our reserves were kept in gold or dollars, because the system of fixing or pegging the value of a domestic currency to dollar gave the importance to the availability of dollar with world nations. So if you have dollar with you, that will help you to manage the pressures that will happen during the during your foreign exchange transactions. That's why every nation tried to accumulate their reserves in US dollars. That was actually a cushion for them to excel in their international trade. But unfortunately, by 1972, the system got collapsed. Why? Because there were many other countries that were evolving equally powerful as US economy. So the system of, as we say, pegging this against just one currency was not meaningful during that system. And many of the countries were facing high inflation. The price of their the price of the products and services in the economy was increasing. That's what we say as inflation. And so it was very difficult for them to peg it to one currency, that is US dollar. So what happened here is this inflation also led to increase in the price of the gold. So US also faced a difficulty to keep gold reserve with a fixed value of $35 to 1 ounce of gold, because the value of gold also was increasing as an investment opportunity in the world economy. So these aspects were taken into consideration, and there was a major change that has happened in the international monetary system, where it was converted into the floating rate system, floating exchange rate system. Now, the nature of this floating exchange rate system is the value of the currency is determined on the basis of demand and supply of the currency in the market. Okay, demand and supply of the currency in the market. So that's where we need to be evolving, or the present system of international monetary system came up evolving from this concept of how your currency is valued in the international market. See, the demand will increase if you have more exports. The demand will reduce if you have more imports. Why? Because if you are importing products, you have to make your payment in the foreign currency. And when you're making your payment in foreign currency, what is happening here is there is a conversion of domestic currency into a foreign currency. So automatically the demand for the foreign currency will increase and the availability of domestic currency in the market will be reduced. Why? You're converting. You're selling off your domestic currency to procure foreign currency. That's why we say that a nation will have a favorable balance of payment when they have more of exports. That's a concept. That's a logic behind that concept. Okay. So the collapse of Bretton Woods Conference, primarily because of the high inflation and also the rising price of gold, led to the present international monetary system, which is broadly called under the category of floating exchange rate mechanism. Right. So these were the eras as we talk about the evolution of international monetary system. Primarily, we can bring that under 4 categories. One is the gold standard, where the currency of a country was pegged against gold, which value was fixed on the basis of gold. Right, how much you can get, so the pegging was against gold. The second one, more or less, free convertibility was allowed, but the economies were depleted, were lost, so the system did not last much. Then came up pegging against the currency to fix a dollar. Your currency, your domestic currency were fixed against dollar, and accordingly, the value depended on its demand in the foreign market, but it was fixed. When the value of dollar or appreciates, or when the domestic currency depreciates, the exchange rate also will be changing. So it was pegged against the dollar. Then came the present system, where it is totally dependent upon, it's free flowing, it's uncontrolled. There is less intervention from the governmental bodies. It's based on the demand and supply. That's where I talked about the demand for, or the increase in exports will have a favorable impact on the value of the currency, and increase in imports from a country will have an unfavorable impact on the value of the currency, or as we say, exchange rate. Right now we are going into the aspect called India's monetary policy system. In India, what we have to understand is, anyway, we go with the floating rate system, but we have something called as managed float. There are two types of floating rate. One is uninterrupted, without any intervention. It is totally dependent on the movement of demand and supply in the foreign market. That's free market. Okay. But in India, since we are developing, we are actually an emerging economy. There is an intervention which is made by RBI at times to control the movement of flow of foreign currency, or to curb the volatility, because that might hit us in a bad way. So that is why we say that the system prevailing in the country is managed float. It is left to the demand and supply. But then if there are frequent volatility in the exchange rate mechanism, in the exchange rate of Indian currency, RBI, the central bank, will have an intervention to stabilize it. That's why we say that in India, we have something called as managed float. It's floating rate. It's based on demand and supply. But at times we have a purposeful intervention by the central bank for managing the exchange rate fluctuations. That's why our country, when we talk about the monetary policy, international monetary policy of our country, we say that it can be brought under the category of managed float. There are many other countries who go with the same concept, especially with respect to emerging countries. Okay. Yes. We had been discussing about the exchange rate system when we were talking about the evolution. Exchange system, as we discussed in our previous day, it establishes the way in which the rate, or as we say, the value of domestic currency is fixed with respect to other currencies. So when I say $1 is equal to 72 rupees, the value of Indian domestic currency is fixed against dollar. Right. So that is what we call as exchange rate. An exchange rate system can be broadly categorized into fixed and floating rate system. We already explained both these concepts in our previous discussion. In case of fixed rates exchange rate, it is pegged, it is connected, or as we say, no, it is fixed to, it can be a currency as in the case of dollar, or it can be a metal as in the case of gold or silver or any other valuable metal. Okay, so in such a case, the value of your currency is determined on the movement of that particular asset to which you have pegged your currency. So that is what we call as fixed rate, fixed exchange rate system. Now, floating is just the opposite. There is no fixed mechanism here. The movement of exchange rate is dependent on the demand and supply of your currency in the world market. Suppose if the demand is increasing, the value of the currency will automatically increase. And if the demand for your currency is decreasing, that will again negatively impact the exchange rate of your currency. Your value will depreciate against another currency. Right. So if you are going with an more of exports, a country will have a favorable exchange rate because the demand for the currency of that particular country will increase. But if you're going with a lot of imports, there is domestic currency conversion into foreign currency happens at a much faster rate, which will depreciate the value of your currency automatically, the exchange rate, right? So these two are the two international monetary system: fixed rate system, fixed rate exchange rate system, and floating exchange rate system. Now, till now, we had been discussing about what is happening with respect to international foreign monetary fund, right? I mean, international monetary system. When we are talking about international monetary system, the concept of foreign exchange management comes into our discussion. The concept of foreign exchange management system covers the entire aspects that are involved in managing your international monetary system. Because, of course, we have FEMA. Previous to that, we had FERA. FEMA, it came up in 1999. It's an act of India which regulates the foreign exchange management system. That is your external trade, payments, promoting orderly development and maintenance of foreign exchange market in India, controlling of your imports. All these will happen as part of foreign exchange management system of the country. Same as the case, it is applicable to all the economies which are engaged in foreign exchange. Okay, so apart from that, if I'm looking at specifically into the objectives of foreign exchange management, I can bring that under the four headings that is given here. One is correcting the balance of payment. Now, what do you mean by balance of payment? We are yet to learn that in detail, but as an introduction, it takes care of balancing between your imports and exports. No, you will be having a favorable balance of payment when your exports are more than your imports. So correcting the balance of payment means a country to excel, to have foreign exchange revenue, they should have more of exports. So that is where we talk about the management of foreign exchange, correcting the balance of payment so that it leads to creation of foreign exchange reserve. When does reserve happen? When your balance of exports exceeds the balance of imports. So that's where we talk about correcting the balance of payment. India does. Very often we can find the measures adopted by government which encourages certain sectors, especially the service industry, to export services. Of course, now we are looking into manufacturing sector also through various projects like Startup India or the economic processing zones. All these are there. The basic idea behind that is we are trying to reduce our imports by encouraging domestic production. At the same time, we are trying to encourage exports by increasing the quantity of production within the country. So that is the objective of that comes as part of foreign exchange management, which is correcting balance of payment. Second one is protecting the domestic industries. Why? Because if you have a lot of imports, the problem here is you have to look into the price of these products which are available in the market, and it should be ensured that these products are not leading to the collapse of the domestic industries. So that is where we say that there are different protecting measures that are adopted by the government for promoting the growth of domestic industries. And these we have learned, like no subsidy, quota, or other non-tariff measures which are aimed at protecting the domestic industries. So that is also part of foreign exchange management. Then the next is preventing the flight of capital. See, basically this talks about if you have less investment opportunities within the country, automatically what happens here is investors will be searching for many other locations from where we can get enough return for our saving. We mostly will be talking about institutional investors. So preventing of flight of capital can happen from two ways. One is you encourage investments to happen within the domestic boundaries by providing good investment opportunities. Two is making your location attractive to the foreign investors so that you get more of investments into the country. So if you have to make your location, if you have to make your country more attractive to the foreign investors, there should be some kind of stability in the market. There should be some kind of transparency in the market. There should be reasonable return to the investors. All these aspects will be taken care under foreign exchange management. So that's what we talk about, prevention of flight or moving of capital out of the market. Because from India, if we look, we are a country with scarcity in capital, but we have abundance in labor and other investment opportunities. So what we are trying to do is we are attracting foreign institutional as well as foreign direct investments so that we can efficiently use our abundant resources like human capital and the opportunities. So that is what that is happening through foreign exchange management. And the last one is stabilizing the exchange rate is mandatory for any country to perform in a foreign exchange market. Suppose if there is frequent fluctuation in the value of a currency, investors will not be coming into foreign market. At the same time, it will be incurring huge loss in cases for the huge loss maybe to the imports or exports from our country. So that is why stabilizing the exchange rate is another important function that is rendered by, as we say, the foreign exchange management system. And in India, we talked about managed float, which where there is intervention from the central bank at times to stabilize the exchange rate. We already talked about that managed float. Okay, so this is about the foreign exchange management as a function in the international market. Now coming with foreign exchange rate theories, which is very simple. In how we have planned here is we will discuss few theories in our today's class. The rest will be taken to our tomorrow's class. So foreign exchange rate theories primarily talks about the different concepts that are being followed when we fix the exchange rate. Okay, so the first one in our discussion is mint parity theory. Mint parity theory, what the key word here is the metal or the content of metal in each coin under transaction decides the exchange rate, decides the value of the currency. Suppose if I have a currency, a gold coin, okay, then what is the level of content of gold as a metal in that currency will decide the value of that currency. So that is a concept of mint parity theory. What is the content, metallic part involved in that coin? So that's when currencies of two countries are on a metallic standard, it can be gold or silver. The rate of exchange between them is determined on the basis of parity of mint ratio, that is between the currencies of two countries. Say for example, if the country A and B going with a gold coin, Okay, so what is the level of gold content in country A's currency, and what is it with respect to B currency, countries B currency? So this actually determines the value of the currency. So that is why I put it here. The value of each coin will depend upon the amount of metal that is contained in the coin, and that will be freely circulating between the country. So if you have more gold in your coin, you will have more value to your currency. I have put an example. The rate of foreign exchange is determined in terms of gold content of two currency units. This can be silver content also, depending on what type of system that was prevailing. Of course, these were very popular when we talking about the initial evolution stages, where it was pegged against gold or silver. Metal was used for deciding the value of currency, fixed exchange rate system. That's where this mint parity theory had its application. Okay, so what you have to remember is mint is the content of metal in that currency or in that coin determines the value of your coin. That's the theme behind mint parity theory. Okay, the next one, it's very easy for you to understand. It looks up what's the purchasing power which is applicable when there is a trade happening between two countries. Like, no, if you can say there is a fixed basket of goods that will be involved, and how much of that fixed basket you can buy in country A is compared with country B to decide the value of currency. Suppose if you can buy same unit of this fixed basket of goods in country A as well as B, then it is said to be at parity. The value of the currency is in equilibrium. It's same. But if you can buy more goods of the list in country A when compared with country B, then the value of country A would be higher than the value of country B. So your purchasing ability is the determined factor in purchasing power parity theory. So it looks up the prevailing price, the inflation rate, all these factors are considered. Of course, there would be a basket of goods which is considered for fixation of the value of your currency. That is why I'm saying I have put an example. When a country's domestic price level is increasing, that is, a country is experiencing inflation, that country's exchange rate must be depreciated in order to earn in return to PPPF, that is purchasing power parity, in order to return to equilibrium. In order to return to equilibrium, if the inflation rate is high, you will get only lesser for the money you have. That we have learned, right? So in that case, the value of the other currency where you can get more goods would be little higher. So there is no parity, there is no equilibrium. So you have to bring down your inflation to reach to the level of equilibrium, right? So this is all about the purchase power parity theory. Your purchasing power, which is dependent on how much of that, why that particular basket, because you want to bring some kind of uniformity. So that basket will be fixed based on the foreign exchange agreement of the country. So this is the concept which was prevailing. Maybe you don't find this system now being practiced in world economies, but it was popular during the initial years of international monetary system. So purchasing parity theory talks about the ability of or the purchasing power of citizens in a country when compared with other country under consideration. So that's what we talk about, the purchasing power parity theory. So this is the formula here where exchange rate of currency 1 to currency 2, okay, is equal to S is P2, cost of goods, good X, that is that basket in currency 1 divided by cost of goods X in currency 2. So the same category of goods in two countries, currency 1 and currency 2. If the ratio is 1, there is parity. If it is less or more, there is no parity, right? That is the concept of purchasing power parity theory. Then the balance of payment theory. The crux here is, in case of balance of payment theory, it talks about the floating exchange rate system. That is, the value of currency, the value of exchange rate, or the exchange rate is fixed on the basis of movement of the currency in the world market. So it's based on demand and supply. So there is no other force that is controlling the fixation of foreign exchange rate. Only the demand and supply forces that are prevailing in the market. So that's why I put, it follows that external value of a country's currency will depend upon the demand and supply of the currency. So indirectly, it is pointing out towards the type of exports and imports you are having. So these are the, as we say, the four theories which we would be mean parity theory. We discussed about mean parity theory. We discussed about purchasing power parity theory. And the third one which we discussed is balance of payment theory. And the fourth one which we would be discussing in our tomorrow's classes, interest parity theory. And we have one more theory under this category, that is Fisher International Theory. So these are the theories that are very important from the context of international trade. And of course, we know that the most popular one in the current concept, in the current context, is balance of payment theory, because here now most of the nations go with a floating exchange rate system where the exchange rate is fixed on the base of demand and supply that is available on a daily basis. See, if it is a trading day, you have to take care of the movement of the exchange rate in order to get or procure a good rate for your business. So it's on a daily basis on the working, that is, if the trade is happening, it is a trading hour, then it will be fluctuating based on the changes in the demand and supply in the market, in the world market. So balance of payment theory takes care of this fluctuating market conditions. So these are the theories. So to have a recap of our today's class, we started with the primary functions of international monetary system, which was a continuation of our previous class, where we said the primary function includes balancing of payments, preventing the flight of capitals, or ensuring the transparency in the market, ensuring that the transactions in the trade are happening in the right way, protecting the interest of different stakeholders, all these, and also encouraging and protecting domestic industries. All these are part of the role being played by the international monetary system. And the system will have rules and regulations formulated in this regard. The system will have the environment that is facilitating the trade. It has financial and non-financial institutions. All these combined together, we talk about international finance environment, or as we say, international monetary system as a whole. Then we discussed about the evolution of this monetary system, and we said that it can be identified under four categories, which had, the first one is pegging the currency to the gold standard. Then came the interwar period, which where the currencies were freely allowed to trade in the market, more or less. Okay, there was some kind of conditionalities, but generally, if you look into the currencies had little freedom. It was not pegged to any specified asset or currency. Then came the Bretton Woods era, where US dollar got dominated because it was pegged against dollar. Currencies were pegged to dollar, right? The collapse of this system led to the evolution of the present system, which is more or less into the fluctuating or the floating rate system, which depends upon the movement of your exports and imports. So we later in our discussion, we went with discussing about what is exchange rate, what is fixed and floating exchange rate, where we said in case of fixed, it is pegged to one asset, or maybe dollar, can be metals like gold or silver, whereas floating, the rates are decided on the basis of the movement of currency in the international market. Then the last one which we discussed in our today's class was about, yeah, we also talked about the system in India, where we said that we have something called as managed float, where the currency is left free for transaction in the foreign market. The demand and supply decides the exchange rate. However, our central bank intervenes in the moment at times when there is instability in the market, right? Then we talked about the theories. In our today's class, we discussed about Mint theory, purchasing power parity theory, and the last one is balance of payment theory. In case of Mint theory, the value of the coin is decided on the basis of the amount of content of that particular metal in the coin. We spoke with the example of gold. It can go with any metal. How much of what is the volume of that metal in that coin decides the value of that coin. That's the concept of mint parity theory. Then we talked about the second one, which talks with the concept of purchasing power. So if you have more purchasing power, your value of currency would be high. If your purchasing power went down because of inflation or more because of other aspects, maybe economic depression or a depression with respect to some of the calamities, depression that has happened due to some of the calamities, then the purchasing power goes down. Automatically, the value of your currency also comes down. And the last one for our discussion was about balance of payment theory, where it is something that we are experiencing now, which is based on the demand and supply of the currency in the market. So if you have currency is in high demand, the foreign exchange rate, the exchange rate of your currency would be high when compared with a country which is having less demand for its currency. I actually explained the logic behind this. If you have a lot of exports going from your country, automatically the demand for your local currency will be increasing. You would be wanting them to make your payment in the domestic currency. So there is a conversion happening. Sometimes in trade, dollar being a prominent currency, it can be used during using dollar or any other currencies which are having little stability in the market. But generally what happens here is, nutshell is, you will be converting all these into Indian rupee. Right. Even though the trade payments are done using a foreign currency, ultimately you will be using this money in the domestic market by converting that into domestic currency. So if you have more exports, definitely the demand for domestic currency will increase, and vice versa will happen if you have more exports. And this is the concept of balance of payments. When I talk about a favorable balance of payment, what we say is your exports would be higher than your imports. In order to make the situation happen, what is being done by the country, by the governments, is now encouraging the local production of the domestic industries, then development of certain areas which is in which we have some kind of competitive edges. All these are done by the government, national government, to create the situation of favorable balance of payment. Of course, we are going with the different concepts in balance of payment towards the end of our these classes, maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow. So this is it.